The drug made from human sewage. Just when I thought drugs cannot get any worse, then I see this. Let's check
Here's a
it out.
question for you. Would you huff fermented sewage if it meant you could see your dead mother's face for 1 hour?
No.
Bro, just look at a photo. What sort of question is that? Now, most of us would say no immediately. The very idea is revolting. The health
Glad
risks
I'm normal
alone
for
are enough
once.
reason to never consider it. And there's also the fact that the taste of feces and urine would probably linger in your mouth and your mind for days, possibly your whole life.
I can smell this picture.
But you're not a 16-year-old orphan living on the streets of Lusaka, Zambia. You haven't watched both your parents die from AIDS. You're not starving, sleeping in ditches with no family and no future. And you haven't spent years huffing glue just to numb the constant pain of existing. For Luke Mapunde and dozens of other street children, jenkem, a drug made by fermenting human feces and urine in bottles, then inhaling the gases, was worth it. Luke would go into the sewage pond in his town with his friends, plunge his hands into the dark brown sludge, and start scooping it into a bottle. How'd you come up with this? Then he would take that bottle of human feces and urine with him.
Yeah, how does somebody get to this point? Like, were people eating human feces and all of a sudden combined it with something and noticed that this drug created this drug?
With a balloon stretched over the opening.
Like no chemistry genius just sat down and thought, oh yeah, let me combine feces with this so I can remember my dead parent for an hour. You know what I mean?
But to ferment in the hot Zambian sun for about a week. The gases built up inside, primarily
it's
methane
very
and
sad.
hydrogen sulfide produced by decomposing sewage, would inflate the balloon. Then Luke would remove the balloon and inhale those gases. And for about an hour, he'd be high. And we're not talking about just a little light buzz here. We're talking about powerful hallucinations, complete disassociation from reality, and visions so vivid they felt more real than the nightmarish life.
So
that he
they're
was
not doing
living.
it on purpose.
This is not the story that most people know. If you've ever heard of jenkem at all, you probably know it from 2007 when the American media exploded with warnings about a terrifying new drug sweeping through middle schools and high schools. Parents were told to smell their children's breath and check their bedrooms for suspicious bottles. But did jenkem really ever enter America? And how did kids in Zambia ever come to start sniffing gas from? It's an excellent question. Let's find out. In the late 1990s, Lusaka in Zambia was the picture of a society that had fallen apart. There was an HIV/AIDS epidemic, the poverty rates were astronomical, and there were more children on the streets than there had ever been before. The first HIV case in Zambia was reported back in 1988, and by 1991, the National AIDS Program had recorded 15,000 cases, accounting for 14% of the country's annual deaths. 7 years later, around 90,000
That
people
is
died of
insane.
AIDS, and life expectancy plunged from 54 in the mid-1980s to 37. With deaths happening at this rate, traditional family structures
I
were
knew it was
collapsing.
bad. I didn't know it was to this level. Like, goddamn, these kinds of people, they cannot take a break from AIDS to malaria to now human sewage. Like, it can be just randomly on the street and you're just passing by. You don't want to smell that shit, but then all of a sudden you're hallucinating, and because you've inhaled it. Oh god, I feel so bad for them.
When one child lost their parents to AIDS, aunts and uncles would take them in. And when those
Oh,
aunts
yeah.
and uncles died, the child would have nowhere to go because even if their grandparents were alive, they were already caring for 5 or 6 orphan grandchildren.
Oh,
By
God.
1999, an estimated 650,000 children in Zambia had been orphaned by AIDS. But the real number was probably much higher because these statistics only counted double orphans, children who'd lost both parents. Single orphans, kids who just lost one parent, usually the mother, were hundreds of thousands more. And for children without a home or an irresponsible parent, the streets were the only option. We're talking about children as young as 6 or 7 having to scavenge on the streets, beg and steal, sleep in ditches, and grow up sniffing drugs as the only form of pleasure and escape. Glue sniffing was popular during that time. Genkem brand
Yeah, I've heard
glue
of this.
specifically, which
This is insane. When I was in school, I used to love. Is it okay for me to share this? But when we would do arts class and different shit, right? Arts and crafts, right? And we would use glue for different stuff. Bro, I loved smelling that stuff. I never like felt like I was under some hallucination or under some influence, under some drug. It just smelled nice. You know what I mean?
where the name jenkem came from. was particularly popular. They'd also huff petrol when they could steal it. Anything went, so long
I still love smelling gas.
as it could numb the constant hunger, fear, and awareness
I shouldn't be
that
making
every day
fun,
might
making
be
fun
their
of this.
last. Then, sometime in the mid-1990s, somebody discovered that sewage worked too. The first media mention
How?
came in August 1995 in an Interpress Service Wire report. A journalist described boys hanging around the sewage ponds in Lusaka's Garden Township, ponds so putrid that people literally sped through that section of the slum, unable to stand the stench. The boys would scoop up human waste from the edges of the sewer ponds in old cans and containers, cover them with plastic bags, and leave them to ferment for about a week. Then they'd inhale the biogases that built up. Mukule Nyambe, a 5th grade dropout, told the IPS reporter, quote, "Old man, this is more potent than cannabis." In July 1999, BBC reporter
I really
Ishmael
don't know what to
Matheson
comment.
went
I
to
usually
Lusaka
have
to
a lot of
invest-
stuff to comment, and I usually yap a lot in my videos. This is not how I am usually. I really don't know what to comment.
At the sewage ponds, she watched 2 teenage boys plunge their hands into the dark brown sludge, gathering up fistfuls and stuffing it into small plastic bottles. They tapped the bottles on the ground, careful to leave enough room at the top for methane to form. She interviewed 16-year-old Luke Mapunde, who
my
told
night
her
is
why he
ruined.
preferred jenkem to other substances. Quote, "With glue, I just hear voices in my head. With jenkem, I see visions. I see my mother, who is dead, and I forget about the problems in my life." Yeah, this kid, 16 years old,
That's
living
so
on the
fucking
streets,
depressing.
his mother dead, was huffing
That kind of a
fermented
sentence from a
because it let
16-year-old.
him see his mother again for an hour.
Oh,
For 60
God, it's so
minutes,
sad.
he could forget that he was a child with no parents, no home, no future, living in a city where sewage ran through the streets and AIDS was killing everyone he knew. Nathan Banda of Zambia's Drug Enforcement Agency confirmed Jenkins' existence to the BBC. He wasn't proud of it. "It's unimaginable," he said. "It hits right at the heart to see a human being coming down to a level to be able to dip his hand into a sewage pond, picking out the material."
And the government didn't do anything about this. They've got so many issues, but nothing. Making, I don't know, enforcing harder laws on littering and pollution. Usually poor, like littering and pollution and environmental stuff is something that more, in my experience, I'm not this political expert or environmentalist economic expert, but usually countries that are already a little bit more developed and a little bit more richer usually tend to care more about, environmentalism and the ecosystem. Or in other words, where people live and natural reserves, they keep maintained, nice, spotless, but then they destroy other areas of their countries or the ocean where they just throw out shit or factories and so on, right? And that pollute the environment. So, yeah.
Not caring about anything.
Usually
but the
not
feeling
where
of getting
people live.
high. End quote. A 2002 report by Project Concern International Zambia and Fountain of Hope, non-profits working with Lusaka street children, listed jenkem as the 3rd most popular drug among the city's young addicts, behind cannabis, glue, and dagga, but ahead of uncured tobacco.
What's
and
dagga?
petrol. So jenkem, it was real.
My knowledge on drugs is almost zero.
Desperately, horrifyingly, disgustingly real, but it was contained to one city in one of the world's poorest countries, used by children so destitute that huffing sewage gas seemed like the only reasonable option. And then the internet got a hold of that. On June the 7th, 2007, a user calling himself
I can only
Pickwick-
imagine all the racism that was all over the internet. So, yeah, I can only fucking imagine. I live in a part of the world that is very racist on average. So, sadly, I can only imagine. In 2007, I was 6 years old, so I didn't know. I didn't know anything about the world, I still don't. But when I was 6,
logged into Totsi.com, short for Temple of the Screaming Electron, a discussion forum dedicated to drug experiences, hacking, and generally offensive content. Totsi is the kind of place where people shared instructions for making explosives, posted about their shoplifting techniques,
Of course.
and this is the surface web dark web, and tried
Crazy
to one-up
people.
each other with increasingly outrageous stories. Pickwick posted
Idiots.
a series of photos showing
Natural
himself
selection.
making jenkem. There was a large glass jug filled with what looked like feces and urine. A balloon was stretched over the opening. In subsequent photos, the balloon had inflated as gas built up inside it. The label on the jug reads Jenkem, Pickwick, Totsi. Then Pickwick posted his trip report. He described inhaling the gas from the balloon, immediately feeling lightheaded and experiencing intense hallucinations. He claimed he saw his grandfather, who had died, talked to trees and rocks, and lost all sense of time and space. He claimed the high lasted about 40 minutes.
I think if I talked to my dead grandpa, and then, hallucination ends, I'm back to at least kind of normality, I would be just more depressed.
Followed by a come down that made him have auditory hallucinations with voices and loud cracks that made him paranoid. In conclusion, he wrote, was it enjoyable? No, not really. Would I do it again? Definitely not. Would I recommend another person try it? I wouldn't to anyone I'm close to. If you are very adventurous and would try anything,
I would only to people that I hate.
You should try jenkem, but know that the preparation is not made
You'll tell them that's just fermented chocolate. Yeah.
worthwhile by the trip. End quote. This post spread like wildfire across the internet. It was shared on Dig, a popular social news site. It made its way to 4chan's B-board, where trolls delighted in the gross-out factor. It appeared on Encyclopedia Dramatica, the unofficial archive of internet pranks and trolling incidents. For a few months, jenkem remained as just an internet joke, a disgusting story circulating on shock forums where people competed to post the most offensive content possible. But then law enforcement discovered it, and perhaps it was the way they discovered it that led them to attach more credibility to an internet post than they normally would have. On September the 19th, 2007, a concerned parent contacted Palmetto Ridge High School in Collier County, Florida. According to her son had learned about jenkem from conversations with other students, and she was worried that this new drug was spreading through the school. The case was handled by Corporal DeSaro of the Collier County Sheriff's Office, and upon investigation, he came across Pickwick's photos. So, he issued an internal intelligence bulletin. The bulletin included Pickwick's photos, still clearly labeled Totsi with his username visible, and it described jenkem as a homemade substance created from fermented human waste that produced a euphoric high similar to ingesting methamphetamine or cocaine. The bulletin
Also, how do you get that human waste? Is it yours? You just pick up yours, or you go into sewages?
To be on the lookout for
Why?
bottles or mason jars containing feces and urine, and noted that, quote, the first use of jenkem is believed to have been in Zambian correctional facilities in the mid-1990s, and that it is now believed that this activity is taking place locally. The bulletin was supposed to stay informal and serve as a guide for the cops to be able to recognize it if they ever saw it on the streets, but somehow...
Imagine being a cop and having to smell that. Oh, is that fermented chocolate, or I'm gonna stop. It's disgusting.
Got out.
But yeah,
The document ended up on Snopes.com and TheSmokingGun.com, websites that specialized in exposing interesting documents and debunking urban legends. And the media, predictably, went ballistic over this. Local TV stations were the first to pick up the story, from KIMD in Mason City, Iowa, to WIFR-TV in Rockford, Illinois, and Wink News in Fort Myers, Florida. They advised parents to wait up for their children at night and not to let the kids go to bed until they'd seen them and smelled their breath. On November 6, 2007, Fox News published an article titled "Drug Made from Human Waste Causing Stink on Web" in law enforcement. KXAN in Austin, Texas, an NBC affiliate, reported on the police being trained on how to spot jenkem use and how it had to be taken seriously because, according to an addiction counselor who was consulted on the case, quoting, once it becomes okay with a certain group of adolescents, it becomes okay with a lot more. Even the Drug Enforcement Administration...
That's how culture is built. That's basically the sentence of how culture evolves, and religion and everything. So, please don't ever make this normal. There's already a lot of stuff that are normal that shouldn't be normal, or that are considered normal by some people. That is insane. But again, different cultures. It is what it is. I'm not gonna, hate all of them. But I don't remember this. I mean, yeah, I was a little kid, but I don't remember this ever reaching Eastern Europe. Maybe it did, but I was just a little kid and, never reached me. I never remember my parents smelling my breath before I went to bed, so yeah.
Got involved. DEA spokesman Garrison Corley had an interview with ABC News where he said, "It is in Africa. We know that. We've heard rumors and speculation about it here, but part of looking for trends is listening first for speculation. It is something we want to keep on top of." When pressed about whether jenkem was actually a drug, Courtney added, "We wouldn't classify it as a drug so much because it's feces and urine." It made sense that the DEA was so skeptical. There were no samples.
I mean, It's still bad. I don't care what you classify it
seized,
as.
no actual cases reported, and the
Like,
panic
people don't classify, alcohol and cigarettes as hard drugs, but I still hate them. I wish they didn't exist. It is what it
was
is.
based on pictures on the internet by a random user. The fact that there was even a panic on the streets was ironic because 2 days before the Collier County Bulletin was issued, Pickwick had actually come clean. He had posted a thread titled, "The jenkem thing was a hoax," and explained that his jenkem was actually made from flour, water, beer, and Nutella hazelnut spread.
Yeah,
Quote,
yeah, of
"I
course.
never inhaled any poop gas and got high off
They
it."
basically used my joke, okay? Fucking pieces of
I
shit.
deleted the pictures.
Literally.
Hopefully no weirdo saved them into his computer. I just don't want people to ever recognize me as the kid who huffed poop gas. Too late though, mate. The weirdos had definitely saved them, and now those photos
Yep.
were in official law enforcement bulletins
Yep.
being
Once you put
circulated across the
something
country,
on the
each of
internet, it's always there. You delete it? Nope. It's somewhere deep in there, like the shit in your ass. I'm sorry.
Fox News
I
and
apologize.
discussed
I
on national
apologize.
television. All right, so here's a question for you. Could this actually work? Fermented human waste does produce gases, primarily methane, hydrogen sulfide, and ammonia. All three are toxic. All three can cause serious health problems. But
Okay.
can they get you high? And the answer is maybe, sort of. It's a bit complicated. Methane.
Let's not find out. Let's not test it, okay? I would much rather, biological, chemistry, physics experts and scientists, spend time on some different stuff. This is not important in my opinion.
Is an asphyxiant. It displaces oxygen, which means if you inhale enough of it, you'll experience hypoxia. That's oxygen deprivation to the brain. Hypoxia can produce
Yup.
feelings of euphoria, lightheadedness, confusion, and yes, hallucinations. It can also kill you pretty quickly.
It's just the same as, being in close to a fire and there's a lot of smoke, right? You develop hypoxia happens in that situation.
But there
too.
is a window where you're just getting enough oxygen to stay conscious, but not enough for your brain to function normally. In that window, it can feel like you're high, even though you're just oxygen deprived. Hydrogen sulfide is more interesting. It's the gas that gives sewage its characteristic rotten egg smell. At low concentrations, it irritates the eyes and respiratory system. At moderate concentrations, it causes confusion, loss of consciousness, and respiratory failure. At high concentrations, well, it causes immediate death. There have been sewage workers who accidentally breathed concentrated hydrogen sulfide in and dropped dead on the spot. It's called sudden death syndrome. But hydrogen sulfide is also a
Hey, people working blue-collar jobs, especially this type of shit. Every time I say that word, but especially this type of jobs, need to pay them more, okay?
active gas. Research shows that it affects brain chemistry. Current medical research is actually exploring hydrogen sulfide as a way to induce suspended animation in trauma patients, as it basically slows down your entire metabolism. So yeah,
Okay.
huffing jenkem would get you feeling like you're high. The hypoxia alone would do it. But whether it produces
Okay, so we know. Why did he say we don't know?
visions like Luke described, that's not proven yet. It might be
Oh.
real, but it could also be a placebo effect, a state where your brain produces certain results based on your expectation of that result. But
Yeah.
what's absolutely certain is that jenkem is as dangerous as hell. Now let's start with the obvious. Your huffing gas is produced by fermented human waste. Raw sewage contains bacteria, viruses, parasites, and pretty much every pathogen that lives in the human digestive system. Salmonella, hepatitis A, E. coli, pinworm, norovirus. The list really does go on because, well, it's human. When you're putting your face in a bag of fermented sewage or huffing from a balloon full of sewage gas, you are exposing yourself to all of it. No surprises. And then there's the fact that oxygen deprivation to the brain causes immediate damage. Brain cells start dying within minutes of being deprived of oxygen, and there's the risk that comes with all inhalants, where sudden sniffing can sensitize the heart to adrenaline and trigger fatal cardiac arrhythmia. That
God
means your
damn,
heart just
so many
stops
issues.
with zero warning. And then there's the taste.
This is like motivating me to never ever actually go into those old types of. There's a lot of old buildings used to be malls or whatever, or they still are, right? And there's public bathrooms or gyms, old gyms. There's a bathroom, right, and it smells like crazy. I haven't been to an old gym for like years, but it smells like crazy. And I like you go just to pee for a minute, and you've been there for like half a minute. You already can't stand it. You're feeling dizzy. You just run away. Now I know what he's saying.
which is a nightmare in itself, as you can probably imagine. Users say the taste of sewage in their mouth.
Also, imagine zoo workers and zookeepers, and they have to pick up feces from lions, from hippos. Yeah, let's not make it
lasts
worse.
for days. Imagine walking around
I'm just
with
making
a
it worse.
stinky mouth that tastes like sewage because you wanted to get a weird high for an hour. Not great. So it's safe to say that jenkem never did actually catch on in America. It was a hoax because, apart from the high alert
Good.
and paranoia it brought, nobody actually ever confirmed anything. After the 2007 panic, the DEA confirmed that despite all the media reports, they had 0 confirmed cases of jenkem use in the United States. They had made no arrests, had no seized samples, and there was not even one
Bro,
emergency
back then YouTube wasn't that big. It existed, but stuff like that didn't happen, like what I'm about to explain. Same with TikTok, and the streaming culture basically didn't exist like now. Now, if this caught on today, and it was happening today, you would be seeing people filming themselves live on Twitch and Kick, on YouTube, on TikTok, filming and posting tons of videos and pranks with this. And you know what the F part is? The fucked up part is? I just stopped. My brain just stopped working. It looks like there's Jenkins next to me or whatever it is. The fucked up part is some people would actually use the real thing. Yeah. Yeah. Also, every single title will be real Jenkins thrown at people's faces on the street or in Walmart.
visit where doctors confirmed exposure to sewage gases. Partnership for a Drug-Free America said that they'd never heard of jenkem before the media panic, and Arrow is a massive database of drug experiences where people document every weird substance they've ever tried, had nothing on jenkem beyond the Pickwick hoax. In 2009, the city of Bettendorf in Iowa amended its city ordinance to include organic substances in its list of illegal inhalants because of jenkem concerns. This was the only legislative action, as far as we could confirm, that was ever taken in response to the panic.
Okay.
In 2010, the police condemned an apartment building in Fort Pierce, Florida.
I
finding
never hear stuff coming out of Iowa, so yeah.
containers of human waste. There was speculation
This is the
that
first.
the tenant might have been manufacturing jenkem, but since that was never confirmed, the tenant was never charged with anything related to drug manufacturing. Maybe he just liked having in a bottle. These were the only cases where there was any real suspicion of jenkem, but again, neither case ever resulted in anything concrete. Compare that to the tens of thousands of annual arrests for marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine, or the thousands of emergency room visits from inhalants involving glue, paint thinner, aerosols, and nitrous oxide, and it's not
I
even
don't know any of those.
there's just nothing. jenkem just isn't happening in America. If it were, we'd know. People would be going to hospitals with hydrogen sulfide poisoning and sewage-related infections. There would be arrests. Basically, the data would show us if it was actually a thing, but it doesn't. So if American jenkem was fake, why did so many people believe it? Well, that's because it perfectly fit pre-existing moral panics about drugs and youth culture. The 2000s were the peak of this new scary drug panic. Every few months, media outlets would report on some new threat to America's children. They would claim ecstasy was putting holes in teenagers' brains. It wasn't. Or that meth was turning people into
Why?
face-eating zombies.
What was this trend? Is it something to do with like a corrupt government or people from trying to gain something out of this? Like someone, in some way, somehow was making money out of this. Why? Why was there such a craze on making up stories and news of some new diseases on young folks?
It wasn't. Or that kids were getting high from smoking banana peels. They weren't.
Was
Remember
it
that
because of some president that was, in power back then, and they just wanted to sabotage him? Say, hey, look, what's happening? Well, this guy is on, is the president, and the medical system is failing us, and the police are failing us. Is that why, or is that one of many reasons?
Anarchist cookbook.
Like,
Might
why?
have tried that. Definitely doesn't work, allegedly. It was always the same pattern. A sensational claim that led to panic among parents, which led to even more media coverage, which would eventually lead to a quiet retraction or debunking that nobody noticed because everyone had moved on to the next scary drug story. Jenkem was perfect for this formula. It was gross, memorably gross, in a way that grabbed attention immediately, and it was supposedly cheap and easy to make, feeding fears that kids could get high from anything. It came from Africa, which allowed it to be framed as an exotic foreign threat invading American schools. And because most parents at the time didn't understand internet troll culture, so when law enforcement said it was a real threat, well, they believed it. And honestly, you can't entirely blame them because jenkem was real in Zambia. The BBC and the New York Times had reported on it. Even non-profit organizations working with street children had documented it, so this was a real thing that children were using in real life. The leap from desperate orphans in Zambia are huffing sewage to American teenagers doing it wasn't giant. Teenagers have been known to do really dumb things. They
Yeah.
huff glue, they sniff markers,
Yeah,
they chug
I
cough
did.
syrup. Why wouldn't they try jenkem? But they didn't, because
I
no
would even. I'm still an idiot, but back then, goddamn, was I an idiot? Would still never try jenkem. Fuck that.
matter how teenagers can be, there is apparently a line, and that line is huffing fermented sewage.
Nice.
From time to time, there's a nod to the widespread hoax in entertainment, like in the South Park episode named Major Boobage that satirized moral panics by featuring kids getting high from inhaling male cat urine. There's also Jenkem Magazine, a skateboarding magazine that deliberately chose the name for its shock value and connection to gross out culture. On forums and message boards, jenkem became shorthand for obviously fake drug scares, a way to mock people who fell for hoaxes. It's referenced in discussions about media manipulation, moral panic, and how easily internet trolls can fool authoritative
Yep, and
sources.
back then, internet trolls just did it for the fun of it. Now, people are trolling to make money out of it or steal shit or ruin other people's lives. Well, specifically some person or some people, right? Specifically talking about cancel culture and other trolls, right? Back then, people just did it for the fun of it.
But in Zambia,
Now it's all
jenkem
for
wasn't a
something.
joke. By
For the money.
2007, when the American panic was happening, jenkem use in Lusaka had actually declined significantly. The Zambian government had launched education campaigns about the dangers, and non-profit organizations were working to get street children off the streets and into schools and shelters. Glue sniffing did remain a problem, but jenkem specifically had become less common. The director of Zambia's Ministry of Sports, Youth and Child Development, John C. Zulu, told reporters in November 2007 that jenkem use was less common than glue sniffing, and that while street children still used it occasionally, it wasn't the epidemic that it had been in the late 1990s. The horror of
Okay.
jenkem isn't just that it exists.
Well, I guess, how can I end this video? Don't consume or sniff anything that comes out of any living being's fucking body. Okay? And also don't do any of the other drugs. Well, my night is ruined. I'm gonna enjoy my liquid jenkem, or whatever how it's pronounced. It's fucking water, I'm joking. And have a nice day. And like and subscribe.